So just share my screen. And can everyone see the presentation? Okay, good, good, good. We have a couple other folks joining here. And all right, I think I'll go ahead and get started. So thanks everyone for coming. A lot of familiar names and faces. I know I've seen you all in trainings before, but this training is designed for cost center managers, so new cost center managers or any cost center managers who want a refresher. We're going to kind of cover your role as a cost center manager in Workday, a review of the financial data model, which is our account string or how we account for transactions within Workday. And then I'm going to go over some general routing, things you'll see in your inbox, things to look for in, when you're reviewing those items, and then kind of do a wrap up and Q&A. So feel free to chat me questions throughout the training, and I will pause for questions throughout as well. So for those of you who just joined, I am recording this training, so just keep that in mind throughout the session. All right, so all you folks are cost center managers. So as a cost center manager, your role is very important to the financial responsibility of the college and our fiscal health. You are fiscally responsible for the transactions that are charged to your cost center. So anything that comes into your inbox is going to hit your budget. So if you're not sure how, this training will give you the tools you need to make that assessment. But if you're approving it, it means it's going to hit your budget in some way or another. So you're responsible for ensuring that the spend or transaction is in compliance with MICA's written policies and procedures, and that the spend is necessary and reasonable, for the college and for your cost center. When you're reviewing the transaction, you're verifying the appropriate coding of the expense in accordance with the FDM, which I'll go over first, and then using the tools within Workday to regularly monitor and track your program budget. So I am going to kind of do a high level overview of your budget reports, but the budget reporting sessions are tomorrow, and Jim will do a deeper dive into the budget reporting tomorrow, but this will give you the baseline to understand how those transactions get into your reports. Throughout the training and your time as a cost center manager, you'll hear us talk about other roles within Workday. So as a cost center manager, you're a financial manager, which means you're fiscally responsible for the spend. There are other types of financial managers, and these all tie into the FDM, the financial data model, and the work tags tagged to the transaction. There's gift managers, grant managers, and project managers. And so those are all considered financial managers. And the managers are responsible for the spend within those work tags. So if you think about, your division or your department, your cost center managers, the oversight or the overall responsibility of that cost center and the spend. An analyst assists the cost center manager in, analyzing that data, so they have view access to the budget reports and other transactions within the work tags to assist in kind of analyzing the data, pulling down the reports, and monitoring and tracking. A buyer has access within Workday to create purchase orders and to really buy and utilize Workday to purchase, go through the procurement process within the system. A services coordinator is a term or a role that MICA uses to identify folks who, assist, most commonly with, hiring independent contractors. And those folks have access to DocuSign to generate, independent contractor agreements and various documents within there. And then, some additional security within Workday to initiate those transactions. And then a requester is anyone on campus. So different than, the way you use Workday for HR. Typically, processes in finance can be initiated by anyone on campus. And that's why your role as a cost center manager is so important, to be reviewing the transactions to make sure that they've been authorized and that they're coded properly and that they're accurate within the system. Any questions on the roles that you'll hear about? Okay. All right. So the FDM structure, I know if you've been in these Workday trainings, you've heard this a million times, but the FDM is our framework to support accounting, budgeting, and financial reporting in Workday. Workday uses a concept called work tags to allow for robust reporting in a multi-dimensional structure. So when you think about work tag, you can think of it a lot like a hashtag that you would tag to something that you would post on social media, on Instagram or Twitter. You tag your transactions with work tags in Workday, and we can kind of turn the dials on this slot machine and report on that activity in any combination of ways. So just to kind of go through the work tags that are most commonly used by you as a cost center manager and by MICA institutionally. A spend category, a cost center, and a fund are required on all spend transactions. And a spend category just identifies what you're buying. And so, if it's instructional supplies or if it's computers or office supplies, you would choose the appropriate spend category to categorize that within your budget. Then the cost center is your division of locus, or the fiscal responsibility for the spend. So whether this is, the academic program or, the provost office or, your various offices, this is kind of the division of locus who has responsibility for that spend. And then the fund identifies where the funds are coming from to pay for that expense. So if it's coming from your operating budget, you'll use Fund 110. And then if you're attending the restricted manager training, I'll kind of go over the other restricted funds in that training. But most commonly, cost center managers here who are using the operating budget will use Fund 110. And then we have a variety of additional work tags. So when you look at the transactions within Workday, location, program, gift, project, and grant are considered additional work tags, which can be used to tag transactions and track them in an additional way. So they're optional for most transactions, and I'll kind of just go through them one by one. A location is exactly as it sounds. It's a physical location on campus, and it's typically used as a building and most commonly used by facilities to kind of track our spend within each of the buildings. We need to know how much it costs to operate a building, and so we track our activity that way. I'm going to skip over program for now, but a gift is a donation or a combination of donations from more than one donor for a specified purpose. So what this means is I give, $1 million to MICA to spend, for the painting department. This, will go into a specific gift category, and that those funds can be spent only for that purpose. And we are required by law to track exactly what we spend that money on. And so if you donate for this purpose and I donate for this purpose, all that money goes into the gift work tag. And then when you spend it, we can say, oh, this is what you spent it on. A project is a distinct project with a begin and end date. So these are most commonly used at MICA for capital projects. So there's a capital project ID for every single capital project on campus, and those are, tagged to our capital spend. And then a grant is a one-to-one relationship with an award from a sponsor, typically with a distinct budget and end date. So what this, for example, our AmeriCorps award we receive every year from just one sponsor, the state of Maryland, and they give us this specific amount every year, and we have to track exactly where we spend those funds, and so we track it in the grant work tag. The grant functionality has in Workday is more robust and allows us to meet compliance requirements that pop up in those grants that our sponsors are expecting to see specific reporting and unique requirements associated with grants. And then a program is used to capture anything else. So, any kind of programmatic activity that you want to track within your budget. So, for example, BCAN uses programs within their budget. So they have the overarching division of responsibilities, the BCAN cost center, and then they use specific programs to track exactly, what type of activity that spend is. So is it for their help desk? Is it for the mobile unit? Or, any variety of those activities. So at the end of the day or at the end of the year, they can kind of see, hey, this is where I spend our funds, and they can slice and dice the information in a variety of ways. So just an example of some coding that you'll see on your transaction. So if the spend here was for a purchase of instructional supplies within your operating budget, you would see the spend category SC 761, and then you would have the Fund 110, which indicates that it's coming from the operating budget, and then the cost center CC 1531 MFA filmmaking. And then all of these other additional work tags are optional, and for this example wouldn't be used. And then if you were to go ahead and use restricted funds, say you wanted to spend out of your Friends of account, or you got a donation for that specific purpose, you would add in here your Friends of account as a gift work tag, additional work tag, and the fund would change to 210, indicating that it was coming from restricted funds and not from your operating budget. Any questions so far on the FDM? All right. So it may seem like, if I hop back here to this, slot machine slide, that there's a lot of different work tags to keep track of. And there may be, depending upon your division, but Workday makes it a little bit easier with a concept called related work tags. And so what this means is that the work tags, they work together as a team. So when we set up the work tags within Workday, we can identify exactly, what most common other work tags are associated with it. So for example, the cost center MFA filmmaking typically almost always uses Fund 110. So when you enter in the cost center MFA filmmaking, Fund 110 will automatically populate, so you don't have to fill that in every time. And so the leading work tag, or the work tag that will have all of the other related work tags, is called the driving work tag. And the best practice is to choose the most detailed, or the lowest level of detail in your work tags, and all of the other related work tags will follow. So for example, if you had a capital project and you were spending out of a capital project, you could choose your capital project here, this HVAC system replacement. That was a facilities project in the Fox building. So when I select that project, it'll automatically pull up the Fund 170, which is for capital projects, the location, Fox building, and the cost center for facilities. And you wouldn't have to fill in all of those, you would just fill in the project ID. Any questions on the FDM? So the FDM as a cost center manager is really important to understand and to conceptualize, because in order to review transactions and visualize how that'll show up in your budget, you need to kind of have that baseline knowledge. Okay. So now I'm going to jump into some transactions that you'll see in your inbox, and then give you a demo in Workday of what they look like, and things to look out for and your responsibility. So when anything that, again, you're responsible for will come into your inbox, to approve, send back, deny, or close. So when you get into your inbox, approve means I approve this spend. It's okay to pay for it. It should hit my budget. So you want to click that if it's coded to the wrong cost center, or you didn't authorize the purchase, or goes against policy. You could either choose to send back or deny. So clicking deny terminates the transaction altogether. So if there was just an error on it and someone needed to make a change, you would want to send that back so they could make the changes and then resubmit it, versus a deny if your manager chose deny and it was really just a mistake, then the requester would have to start back over. So they would have to reinitiate the transaction, re-upload the receipts, and there are times when deny is appropriate, but most commonly you'll be using the send back. And then the close button just closes it for later. You're not taking any action at that point, so you'll have to address it at a later time. So we also generated this document for you as a cost center manager and for your support staff and other members using Workday to identify which business process within Workday. So I'm not going to go over this in detail in this training. I have done it in the supplier invoice training, and we'll do it in other trainings in the future, but I just wanted to link this document here so you have it, quick access when you go back to this training. And this document is designed to be kind of a click through document to help you navigate what you need to do or what your staff members need to do when you need to pay an individual or an entity. And so here you would just kind of identify who you needed to pay and then click on the box, and it would route you through this visual workflow and link you to the specific user guides or job aids that you need to initiate those transactions. So again, I'm not going to go over this in detail right now, but this is an important item to know as you're reviewing transactions. If your requester took the appropriate approach, you could prevent a lot of churn in the system or a lot of send back from our office if you're familiar with these processes and kind of how they need to be followed in order to get folks paid. All right. All right, so now I'm just going to kind of toggle through a variety of transactions. You'll see what they mean and how they got into your inbox and things to look out for. So if you see an expense report in your inbox, this is either a request for reimbursement for out-of-pocket expenses from an employee. Any employee on campus can submit an expense report, or it's the coding of M&T card transactions for M&T travel. So anyone can submit these expense reports, and when it comes to your inbox, that either means you're the manager, like the supervisory manager, through HR of that employee, or it's hitting your cost center. And so you'll receive a notification in Workday, and there will be an item in your inbox to review or approve. So I have some screenshots here just to kind of, keep within the training, but I'm also going to jump over to what they look like actually in Workday as well. Let me just jump over to Workday now. Sorry, give me a minute here. Okay, can everyone see my Workday? I guess tell me if you can't see my Workday. So I'm logged in here as a test manager, and before we go forward, I just wanted to kind of go over some general navigation for Workday when you log in as a cost center manager. You'll see, a couple icons up here. So this W is always your way to get back to this home page. So regardless of where you are in Workday, if you click the W, it'll take you back to this landing page right here, which is a good place to start. This cloud, if I click on this, will take me to kind of my personal profile. I can go back home, which is this landing page, and I can update my preferences and kind of look at some items here. This inbox, or this kind of box here, takes me to my inbox, which an inbox item, and so here you'll see the number 6 indicates that you need to take action on it. So if you have something in your inbox, that means that it's waiting for you to do something. So here we're going over this expense report, which I submitted just as a test expense report. And this is waiting for me to approve or, send it back or deny here. And then just this bell is an alert. So if you get a notification or an alert here, you'll want to read it, understand what it means, but it doesn't require you to take any action. It's more alerting you that something has happened. All right, so for this example here, I've queued up an expense report just to a test cost center. And so when you're reviewing this transaction, you want to, make sure that this was an authorized spend, that you, knew this was coming, that you have budget available for this training. So that in this example, it was a training. So choosing this expense item identifies how this is going to map to your budget. And then this memo line, and I'll kind of give you just a quick preview of the budget reporting, is what's going to show up in your budget. So you'll want to work with your end users and your admins to make sure that what's being submitted here is what you want to see at the end of the day in your budget as a quick memory jogger. The cost center is appropriate, the fund is accurate, and then if there are any additional work tags, that they're tagged here. And then it's also your responsibility to open up the attachment, make sure that the amounts agree. So this is just an example invoice, but that the amounts agree and that the receipt is itemized, that the purchase is in compliance with MICA policy and allowed, purchase. And then if you're good with this, click approve, or if you're not, if it needs edit, send it back. And then if you completely deny it altogether, you can click deny here. And then there's this additional button, which is add approvers. So there are times when you may want to, route this further in the approval process. It's pretty uncommon, I would say, for you as a cost center manager to be wanting to add approvers. We most commonly use this in finance, but if you do need to add approvers, you can kind of click here and see who's available. And generally, it's only other cost center managers and other analysts that you want to look at the report. Any questions on the expense report? All right, I'm gonna jump back. Let me just present this. All right, so these are all, kind of items I went over. So each of these is a line. So you'll want to click into each one, make sure that each line is supported and that the information is all accurate. And then, like I said before, this information that is how this will all result in your operating report. And again, the details for the operating reporting are showing up or will be in the training tomorrow. But once this is approved, this will show up in your year-to-date actuals, and you'll be able to see when you drill down into your actuals, this is an expense report source and the coding that comes from the expense item. And, this line memo here all the way to the right, and you can see the payee. So I've blacked out a lot of the details on this actual line, but if you click the magnifying glass, then you can get into the actual expense report. And this is kind of what it would look like. And it looks a lot like, what you saw in your inbox when you click into the details, but you do have the access to drill down into all of those details. Any questions on expense report? All right. So a lot of common themes here, and I think it's helpful to kind of go through these transactions, but ultimate responsibility is making sure that the coding on these is accurate. So here, verify procurement card transactions. So this is just a P card transaction for any individual who has a P card. Will code and submit the procurement card verification to you. So your responsibility is to review and approve the P card transaction. Again, it's going to show up in your inbox, and you'll be able to take action on it. So I'll just hop over to Workday. So here, this is the procurement card transaction verification. So here I have one for an employee. And so again, here you're reviewing these details, looking at the charges to make sure that this is an authorized purchase. So the spend category, if we go back to that FDM and that dial and the budget reports, this is how this is going to roll up to your reporting. And then we scroll to the right and you can see the amount. So it's $38.40. This memo line, and so here I have my special event, my test cost center, and the fund 110. So this is how this is being paid for. It's being paid from my cost center out of my operating budget. And so when you get these P card transactions, you will see multiple lines, and you may review all the lines, but you're really only, when you're clicking approve, approving the ones that are charged to your cost center. So here is another line, and this one is tagged to a gift. So my Friends of Training gift, and it's a Fund 210, which means it's coming from restricted funds within my cost center and my special event. Again, I'll want to open the receipt, make sure that it's itemized, that the amount matches the spend, and it's for the purchase that I notated it is, and that it's in accordance with MICA policy. One other kind of send back reason for these documents is these other tabs here. So we get a lot of inquiries about, or a lot of sendbacks for this document date. So the document date here should match the transaction date. So on this one, I would send it back because this is dated May and this is dated February. And so the reason this is important is because this document date designates which budget period this is posted to. So when you go back and look at your budget to actuals by month or fiscal year to date for historical, if we're not posting to the correct accounting period, your reporting will be skewed. So, in this example, if we're posting May transactions to, February, if we did all of our year-to-date expense reports in February, and then next year we go look at our spending to date for the prior year, it would be zero if we coded it the wrong ledger period. Again, another reason why it's important that your, purchasers and staff members submit these reports timely is for you to have accurate budget reporting. So it is part of your responsibility to make sure that your spend is getting into your budget so that you have that visibility, and also so that MICA has that visibility to make budget projections and to be accurate in those transactions to date. Any questions on P-card transactions? Again, I'll this just goes over the items that I covered. Again, clicking approve will make these show up in your year-to-date actuals. And then you can tell if it's a P-card transaction by looking at drilling down into those details and looking at the procurement card transaction verification. So unfortunately, cost center managers don't have the ability to drill down into P-card transaction verifications at this point. So it's even more important for you to make sure these line memos are accurate. So if you need receipts or copies of those reports, you can always email the finance office and we can pull them for you. So it is something that we've submitted to Workday as something that needs to be available, but again, there's no workaround for that right now. All right, any questions on P-card transactions? All right. So you may hear us talk about procurement, and so procurement is the entire overarching process of procuring or acquiring goods or services at MICA. So we have a full procurement system within Workday, and I'm going to kind of work backwards from worst case to best case scenario for using that system or all of the processes we have. So I'll say rec to check, or what this means is a request to purchase something all the way through making the payment. So within Workday, we do have the ability to move all of those requisitions or requests that you receive via email into the system, but we're not quite fully adopted to that place yet. But you may see some departments using it, and hopefully that'll uptick in the future. But I just want to give you an oversight of what you'll see as a cost center manager, and what to expect when that does happen, and how using the procurement system can benefit you to better budget management, more insight into your activity and spend, and kind of how to facilitate that as a cost center manager. I think I'm missing a slide. So right now, this is kind of where we're at. Most folks submit supplier invoice requests to pay for something. And so what happens when someone submits a supplier invoice request, it'll go to the cost center manager and other financial managers tagged to the transaction. You'll approve it. It'll go to finance and we'll approve it, and then you'll see it in your budget actuals. So your number 3. So when we go back to that budget report, that was your year-to-date actuals. Um, so anyone can request to pay a supplier invoice, and it'll come into your inbox and you'll see it. So you'll be reviewing it and approving it, and you'll get an invitation or an inbox item. I'm going to hop over to Workday, show you what that looks like. So supplier invoice requests always start with this SIR or supplier invoice request. And when you get it in your inbox, you'll be reviewing a variety of things. So you want to make sure that the supplier is accurate to what the attachment says. So just make sure that we're paying the correct supplier. And then the invoice number agrees to what's on the actual document, that the spend category is accurate to what you're purchasing, and that's how you'll see it in your budget to actuals, and it should reflect your actual purchase. The total amount agrees to the invoice, and then you'll want to review the cost center fund and additional work tag allocation. So here I did an example of where a purchase was split between multiple departments. And so these say empty, and that's because there are some splits in the transaction. So if I click on this splits button, this will show you the $1,500, kind of exactly how this is being split between various departments. So here, we received authorization that half of this would be funded by our restricted fund, and the rest was coming out of operating. So it was split 750, 750. And you'll just want to review this and make sure this costing is accurate and that there's appropriate budget funds available, and that the purchase was authorized. Any questions here? All right. So again, clicking approve here, once it's approved by finance, will result in year-to-date actuals only. And you'll be able to tell when these have been paid or posted to your budget, because you can see, this is the source is supplier invoice. And if it's in your budget, you're able to drill down by clicking this magnifying glass and take a look at the invoice. But you can also see the spend category. That's what we elected, on the transaction, the fund, cost center, any additional work tags, and then the payee. So in that example we just looked at would be Apple. And then the line memo, again, it's your memory jogger, so you don't have to drill down into every one of these transactions. Any questions on the supplier invoice? All right, so I'm just gonna kind of move forward. So if we're using the full procurement process, you may see purchase orders or requisitions. So supplier invoice is sort of the worst case scenario, because you only get that visibility in your budget in Workday once the spend has already happened. So by the time we get an invoice, we're already obligated for it. The individual or the suppliers already provided the services, and this sometimes could be a surprise to you. You may not know. I mean, hopefully not. Folks shouldn't be spending without you knowing. But if we wanted to improve that visibility and use Workday to track it, you can use the procurement system purchase orders or requisitions. So a purchase order is an obligation for MICA to create a purchase, and these are typically generated by buyers or as a result of a requisition. So when a purchase order is generated, it'll route to you for approval. And when you approve it, you'll see this number 2, you'll see an obligation created in your budget reporting. So I'll kind of show you what that looks like, or where that column is and how it affects your year-to-date totals. But and then, this is getting pre-approval to make the obligation or to commit MICA to buy something from you, make sure the budget funds are available before the purchase is made. And then the buyer will go through the process of issuing the PO and receiving the goods, and then the payment will flow afterwards, and you won't have to approve the invoice if you've already approved the purchase order. So again, you can see these in your inbox. So buyers generate purchase orders, and as a cost center manager, you're reviewing, making sure that budget funds are available, that the purchase is necessary and appropriate, and it'll show up in your inbox. So I'm gonna hop out of here and show you what it looks like in Workday. So here I have a purchase order from B&H Photo. And you can see the supplier's B&H photo. I have a $2,000 total PO. I have two different lines here. So if I scroll over, I'm purchasing non-capital equipment. I'm getting one at 1,000 and another one at 1,000. And again, these are split. So one item is being charged to Friends of Training, and the other one to my operating cost center. And I can kind of look at the process to who initiated this, and there should be some internal notes here, or you should be aware that this is coming as a cost center manager. You know, folks shouldn't be spending your budget without you being aware, but if you have questions, you can always, you know, send it back to the buyer or the requester to answer those questions. So here you would either approve, send back, or, you know, if this is totally unauthorized purchase, you can click deny and it'll terminate the transaction. Any questions on a PO, purchase order? All right, so when the purchase order is approved, so you'll see an obligation in your budget. And so what this means is, you know, MICA has committed, we've created an obligation with B&H Photo to say, we're gonna make this purchase, hasn't happened yet. They have to, you know, acquire the goods, or they have to develop, you know, something until it actually becomes invoiceable. And then once it's invoiced, these obligations will go away and it'll show up in your year-to-date actuals for what we actually paid. And so this calculation of remaining budget is, you know, your current budget, which this screenshot isn't accurate. Current budgets are in here, less your commitments, less your obligations, less your current year-to-date actuals. And this gives you better visibility into what could be coming down the pipeline. Any questions on POs? All right, and then, you know, just kind of take it one step further, a requisition is a request to create a purchase order, a request to buy something. And so anyone on campus can make a requisition within Workday. And what this does, it'll route for review to a buyer to kind of make those purchases, or if it's in a punch out, it won't go to a buyer, it'll go directly to the punch out website. And you as a cost center manager will approve the requisition, and then it'll go back to the buyer to go ahead and make the purchase and obligate with our vendor. So this is, you know, just committing those budget funds to making this purchase. So again, you'll see these in your inbox. They look a lot like the other transactions. You'll want to be reviewing the coding, making sure that the purchase is necessary and reasonable, and that budget funds are available for the purchase. So if I go in, so this is what a requisition would look like. So here I've punched out my requisition to Amazon, and so I can kind of look. I have two items here. I have a keyboard and an HDMI cable. And if you scroll over, you can look at the prices. So this is how it will be hitting your budget. And then also the cost centers. So here, the line memo, that last column in your budget report, the cost center. So this means it's hitting this test cost center. And then if there are any additional work tags, they would show up here. Any questions on the requisition? All right. All right, so again, the requisition creates a commitment in your budget. So this is just saying, hey, I've committed these budget funds to make this purchase. And then you'll authorize these folks to move forward in the buying process. So once that requisition is turned into a purchase order, it'll be removed from the commitments column and enter into the obligations column. And then once the obligation or the PO is, you know, issued and has been fulfilled and it's been invoiced, then those become year-to-date actuals. And those are the kind of transactions you'll see in your inbox as a cost center manager, and how they roll up to your reports. So does anyone have any questions? Go ahead.
For the cost center managers for approving a one-time payment, is that a question I can ask in this meeting, or is that a different session?
You can ask that question, but we don't know we're working on the answer to your Workday support issue. I know, Kath.
Okay, okay, that was all I was gonna ask, because that's the only time that it's come up as an error.
Yep. Yeah, and
Luckily,
that,
all the other things I can see all the details that you should, like you've shown here.
yeah, and that's a security issue that we're working. That is an issue. That is an actual Workday issue we're working through. So that's not your or our error. So I know we haven't touched base with you, but Kathy is working on it.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So again, the FDM is the foundation for how these transactions will show up in your reports. And you want to be diligent to make sure that the transactions are accurate, upfront, and that they're posted properly, and that you authorize them within your budget. Because if you're seeing it in your inbox, that means it's hitting, something in one of your budgets. And garbage in, garbage out is real. So now we've been live on Workday for a little over a year. I think a lot of folks are becoming familiar with the FDM and how it works. And we really have the opportunity to kind of take Workday and leverage it to better fit our needs than maybe PeopleSoft did in the past, or how our conversion did. So when you go through this evaluation of assessing whether your budgets and the structure works for you, really think about how you need to use your budgets. And it's a fine balance between using work tags and not using work tags, because again, the more you tag on there, you do have more visibility and ability to play with those transactions and report in different ways, but there's also more room for error and a lot more diligence that's needed on you as the cost center manager, and training for your admins or whomever is submitting these transactions to make sure that they're accurate, so that they do provide meaningful information at the end. So it's kind of a balance between how you need to manage the budgets and how you need to track your activity. So I'm going to show you the finance resources website. So I linked it here, but if you wanted to get it just from mica.eu/workday, you would just log in to your user ID. And the Workday website is really your resource for all your Workday needs. So for finance, we have a page for Workday Finance, and job aids are step-by-step guides for you in these processes. So what you're looking for. So most of the items that I showed you that will show up in your inbox are here in procurement, and you can click on approved supplier invoice request, and it'll walk you through, kind of the things you should be considering when you look at these transactions within your inbox.
Is the one that you showed early on in your presentation, the who do you need to pay? Yeah, that Jam. Where is that?
Yeah, that's in the, let me get back to Workday. So that's in the what's what tab. So we go back to Workday Finance. The job aids are the step-by-step user guides, training presentations. So I link all the presentations and eventually the videos here, tips and tricks, just some job aids, FAQs. The what's what is really kind of your general, and then I updated this who do you need to pay workflow to be this new document, which is designed to kind of be the one-stop shop for how to get something paid.
Okay, thank you. Awesome.
All right, any other questions? That's the end of the content that I had today, but I'm happy to stop recording and then take any of your questions.